Welcome back to the Impact and Influence podcast. This is Don McLean. Today we're here with Jia Wertz, documentary filmmaker and director. Thank you, Jia, for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Don. I'm excited to talk to you.
Absolutely. No, I am too. And congrats on your first film, Conviction. It debuted on Amazon recently. I watched it. It's a very compelling, moving film. How do you get to that pinnacle of success? Can you walk us through that? Being your first film, to have it on Amazon Prime, I just feel like is it's almost like, where do you go from there, right? So let's talk about.
It's so funny that you say that, because I feel like I have such a ways to go from there myself. But yeah, for sure. I'll tell you, so it's kind of an interesting story. I listened to the Serial podcast back in like 2014 or whenever it came out. And like the rest of the world, I was so captivated with it, and it ended. And I felt very strongly that the subject of the podcast, Adnan Sayed, was innocent, or is innocent. And while the podcast was so entertaining, it was such a well-told story, and Sarah Koenig did a great job of captivating the audience and kind of leaving you hanging of, whodunit kind of story. I felt very, very bad for him. I was like, well, this is entertaining for all of us, but there's a real person here who's sitting in prison, and I think he's innocent. And lots of things point to at least the fact that he didn't get a fair trial. And so I started to wonder what I could do to help him. And I had written an email to his family members, and, I never heard back initially. Of course, I'm sure they got bombarded with emails and whatnot, because it just blew up. And then fast forward to a year or so later, I planned a fundraiser for his legal defense fund, and decided that I would try and just raise some money, if nothing else. And in that process, I met Jeffrey Deskovic. A friend of mine said, I know a guy who has a very similar story, and he'd be a great speaker for your event. And that's how I met Jeff in like 2015. Okay. And then we kept in touch over years. And as a result of the fundraiser and everything, I ended up meeting Adnan's family, and they're just the nicest, most warmest people ever, and more than I did then, even, I believe in Adnan's innocence. And so when he got, I don't know if you're familiar with his whole ordeal, but
not actually with Adnan. So
he had a post-conviction hearing a couple years ago. His conviction got overturned, and then they appealed it, and it's a big mess. But I was at that post-conviction hearing, and I saw a few people filming there. And the family ended up telling us that that crew was the HBO crew, and they were filming the documentary, The Case Against Adnan Sayed. And so I had a 20-year background in photography, and I was watching them work. And in my naive mind, with having no experience in filmmaking, I was like, I could do this. I know how to work a camera. This is just 3 people. I mean, I got 3 friends that'll do this. Sure. And so I went home, and I promptly told my husband, like, oh, I want to do this. And he was like, what? Like, that's not an easy thing to just break into, in your 40s and all of a sudden. And I thought, well, let me at least try. And so we decided I would go to school, and I enrolled in New York Film Academy, and took a documentary filmmaking workshop. And that's where I started as a school project, as my final exam, filming Jeff and just doing interviews with him. And when I was finishing that program, one of the professors said to me, you should really submit this to a film festival. It's really great. And it was a much shorter version. It was like an 8-minute version of the story. Okay. And at that point I had, I was just like, I wanted to learn the craft, and that's what I was doing. And when he said that, I really took it to heart, because he had a really successful film do the film festival circuit, and he'd won some awards. And I thought, his opinion really meant something. And so I submitted it. And within a month, I think we got into 4 festivals. And after that, we've gotten into 11. We've been selected by 11 so far, and we've won a few awards. And so it just kind of took on a life of its own. And it was that one comment from this one professor that made me think, what is there to lose? I'll just do it. And then actually, that when the pandemic hit, I was so bummed, because I'm working on the feature length version of the story. Okay. And I was 90% done filming. And I was like, well, now what am I going to do? I can't shoot the rest of the film, and all this work is just going to sit here. And I noticed that a lot of filmmakers, a lot of really established filmmakers started doing master classes online because they weren't shooting anymore. They had all this free time and they still wanted to do something creative. And so I joined a ton of those. I took 45 master classes in the first few months of the pandemic.
Okay. Wow.
And
You're like super user.
oh yeah, I was just like, I'm a type A personality. I needed something to do. I couldn't just sit at home and do nothing, And that's where I learned how to get distribution for the film and how to get it to Amazon and stuff like that. And that's how it ended up on Amazon after the film festival run.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, just to have that drive to be able to do all those things. And, if the pandemic didn't happen, you might not have been on Amazon at all. So
that's true.
It's interesting how things happen.
It is.
In regards to the film festivals, that's really intriguing to me. What's the story behind the success for getting into those film festivals? What do you think was that one thing that helped you through? Was it the story? Was it your submission? Is it just your overall passion for this space? What do you think was your secret there for success?
I definitely have a passion for the cause, like wrongful convictions. Also, Jeff's story is just so compelling. I mean, what Jeff has done with his life, with the cards he was dealt, is just amazing. If you can tell very well and just tell it as it is, it's so compelling just in and of itself. So there is definitely that. I had such such a great story to tell. And then Jeff himself I've said this to him so many times, he's like a filmmaker's dream, because somehow Jeff has this ability to talk about things that the average person would not feel comfortable talking about. And Jeff talks about them like he's talking about what he had for lunch. Like he will just tell you anything. He's an open book, and he's very matter of fact. He's very matter of fact about even one time in prison where he was almost killed and things like this. Yeah. But he talks about them like literally you just said, how was lunch? And he'll just tell you everything, which makes for, obviously really great content when you're filming somebody, because they don't have any inhibitions, and he's very, very, very open. So that was great too. And I think because I was at New York Film Academy, the professors there, a lot of them are Emmy-nominated professors. And so in the very beginning, in my first film, I had them watching it and saying, I would change this, or, I would keep in mind that you got to do X, Y, Z. And so just, I think the culmination of all those things really, really helped and worked in my favor.
Yeah, that's intriguing. And it's so funny how you met Jeff. I mean, it seems like everything is just kind of has lined up so well for you, but it's also about putting in the hard work and making sure you put yourself out there. I mean, I think if you didn't follow your passion, you wouldn't have made all these certain steps along the way. So,
I agree 100%. When I had a 20-year career in the fashion industry, and when I was in my 20s, I loved doing that. And as I got older, I didn't love it as much anymore. I was like, it's kind of pointless. What am I doing? It's just clothes. Like, who cares about this? When I was in my 20s, I was like, this is so fun. Like getting paid to work in fashion. I was like, I hit the jackpot. But as I got more and more dissatisfied with it, working on the corporate side of things, because it was very bureaucratic, I started my own fashion brand as well, and which I still have. And it was great, but I feel like I could never get that to be as successful as I had wanted it to be. And I think it's because I didn't have the passion for it. And this, I feel like it was fast-tracked. The success of it was so fast-tracked. And I was reflecting just myself and being like, why couldn't I do this for Studio 15? Like, why couldn't I do this for my brand? And I think that's why, because I just have so much more passion for this. And, also there's the aspect of it's a film. So during the pandemic, people are consuming way more content, so it's also kind of the right timing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I want to talk about that for a second, because you've been pretty open about, you had a 20-year career in fashion. You've put that aside to become a filmmaker. I know so many people have gone 10 years, 20 years, their whole life into a career that they've never enjoyed. What do you say to those folks? What kind of advice could you give them to help ease their transition?
I'm not sure. It's so funny. I think everyone should follow their passions because you're just happier on a day-to-day basis. Like work really doesn't feel like work.
Yeah,
I could film all day every day and I love being behind the camera and I love filming things that aren't even part of a film. I just like to do it just for fun. So, and I never feel like I'm at work, which is great. It's a really tough question to answer because most people I can't say most people. A lot of people don't want to leave their comfort zone. So they're too scared to follow their passions. And then there's a whole nother group of people who can't because financially they need the job that they have. I was in this kind of in between stage where I had left my job and I had my son. And so I was already a stay-at-home mom. So I had already gotten comfortable giving up that salary. So it was like baby steps for me almost. And it was easier to make the decision to follow a passion project and make no money in the beginning when I knew I'm already making no money. So what is
sure,
there to lose? It'd be a
absolutely,
much more difficult decision for somebody who has to leave a successful career and salary, right?
absolutely. And
Yeah.
how did you happen upon the New York Film Academy? I mean, it seems like a really great just place to be, place to learn. How did you discover that?
It's just a simple Google search. That was it.
Okay,
I mean, I lived in New York, so I mean, I
of
live in New
course.
York.
Yep.
And so I was looking for something, and I had a 1-year-old son. So I was like, I
Okay.
need something that I can do that fits my lifestyle. And it was a 2-month workshop, and it was in New York. And it just worked. And it was documentary focused. I really wanted to do something that I could just get straight to the point and not have to learn a bunch of, general ed
Sure.
type courses or anything like
Yeah.
that
No, of
because I
course.
didn't have the time. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I just did a simple Google search and then I researched it and read reviews on it. And funny enough, I couldn't find many reviews on it. So I was a little skeptical going in because I was like, is this a real school or what is this? I had never looked into anything film related in my life. I'd had no desire to be a filmmaker. And so it was a really interesting thing. But as soon as I got there, I loved it. And like I think one of the professors worked on Free Solo, that documentary,
Oh,
and
okay.
I think Claudia, who's a professor there, she did the Ruth Bader Ginsburg doc, I think. So I mean, it was like you knew that you were among people who knew what they were doing really quickly.
Yeah. And that certainly helps, as you mentioned, with the film festivals, having those professors to sort of guide you along the way. That sounds like a really incredible experience. Would you go back and take more courses from there, or what's your next steps? Are you thinking about are you thinking about doing more courses?
I absolutely would go back for sure when I have the time. I wouldn't do it now. The funny thing is I have such limited time with a toddler at home that
Sure, yeah,
all the free time I do have, I want to finish the film I'm working on, and it's
yeah.
90% done. It's Jeff's story, but it's the feature length version of it. And then
Okay,
I'm in the process of writing the third one that I'm working on. And so I really just want to get these
okay,
done. I'm kind of 50-50. I feel like I learned the basics and a little more than the basics the first time, and now I could learn the rest in real life application.
oh,
Um,
sure, yeah, no,
right? Yeah. So I don't know, but there's the one thing is the connections you make are invaluable, and that's what would take me back. I think if I went back.
yeah, yeah. Well, you can always stay in contact with folks. Now, you said writing the third one, you skipped the second one. So, what's the second thing that you know?
The second is so the one you watched, Jeff's story. It's
Yeah.
a documentary short. So I'm
Okay.
working on the feature length, so the full hour and a half long version
Okay.
of Jeff's story. So that one is it goes much deeper. I'm sure you noticed the first one focused on Jeff's personal struggles coming out of
Yes.
prison and
Mhm.
reacclimating himself into society. The feature length goes much more in depth into the criminal justice system. Why, like there was DNA evidence in Jeff's case. Why wasn't it tested? Why was he sitting in jail when the DNA could have proven him innocent years earlier? Things like why did he confess to a crime he didn't commit, and how do the psychology behind why innocent people say they did things they didn't do, and it really dives deeper into all of those aspects of what happened, and then it goes in more into what Jeff is doing today. So that's the feature length that's almost finished, and the third one I'm just starting to research. So that one's
Okay.
a possibility.
No, that's great. Yeah, of course. And I certainly don't want you to spill a project that you're working on. So keep that one under wraps. But, Jeff's story it was so intriguing to me. It was just the way that, because of the way he looked, they thought, he was a bad element, which is just, I mean, it still happens, every minute of every day, it seems like. So, I felt like it was just such a moving, like I said, a moving piece. So, thank you for that gift.
Oh, I'm so glad you liked it. I love hearing what people thought, good and bad, because the bad will help me with the next
Yeah.
film, and it's so nice to hear the good, obviously. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
What's one of the biggest things that you learned from Jeff in this whole experience?
Oh man, I mean, perseverance for one.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he's such a motivating person. If he can come from where he was to what he does today, it's just so remarkable. I mean, it's so funny because I edited the film, and as I edited, you end up watching it, I don't even know, 50, 100 times.
I'll
And I
bet.
can't tell you, at least 4 or 5 times I cried just while editing the film. And it's all footage, I've seen, I was there, I filmed it. And it's just, he has so much heart for what he does, and he's so focused on just helping other people, which is really amazing. And that actually made me want to do this work even more so, like it added
Yeah.
to my drive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Wow. Uh, what you were saying before, when you said that he just talks about like talking about lunch, do you think is it just something that maybe from all of those years in jail he just got really comfortable with, or do you think it's just part of his overall personality?
I think it's a little bit of both, but Jeff has been out, I believe it's been 13 or 14 years now.
Mm.
And he's done so much advocacy work that he has told his story hundreds of times in front of crowds. He speaks all over the country all the time and at schools and events. And so I think, and this is just my opinion, that he's told it so many times that it's become kind of autopilot, maybe almost. I'm not sure. I asked him this in the interviews. I was like, how are you so nonchalant about this? How are you you seem like you're removed from it. And he said, he said to cope with it, he has to compartmentalize it. And he almost feels like he's talking about somebody else. He almost feels like that was another life and it wasn't him that he's talking about. And I guess there's so much trauma that maybe that's how he deals with it, I imagine.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I would assume that would be the best way to do it, is just imagine that it's a completely separate life. But
Yeah, I guess
I
so.
assume it would be different for every person.
I've said this so often. I feel like, and of course, I've never been through anything like this, but just thinking about it, I think that if that had happened to me, I would be a very angry, bitter person. Because I would be angry at everybody who did this to me and the system. And he could have been out. I think it was something like 10 years earlier, had his DNA been tested. I mean, to save 10 years of your life in your 20s would be huge, and I would be angry at everything, at everyone. And he's not, which is really, really interesting. And then, going back to Adnan from the Serial podcast, whenever I've heard him speak in interviews and things like that, he also says exactly what Jeff says, which is, I'm not angry. I'm not angry. This is not the life I envisioned, but it's the life I have. And it is a life. It's not, it's not terrible kind of thing. And actually the very first thing that happened that got me supporting this cause of wrongful convictions is when I was like 19 or 20 years old. I read Rubin Carter's book, The 16th Round. And to this day, it's still my favorite book. If you haven't read it, I'm going to send you a copy because it's just remarkable. I'm going to send you one for sure.
Okay.
It's so good. But I read it back then, and it's been 20 plus years. It's still my favorite book to this day. And Rubin Carter, who was a famous boxer in the 60s in New Jersey, he was wrongfully convicted of a murder, and he ended up going to prison for a long time. And in the book, he also wrote that he wasn't angry. And I remember reading it, at such a young age and thinking, how is that even possible? Like, I'm angry reading the book. I can't imagine. And it seems that everybody I've ever kind of had any kind of interaction or read about or heard speak about this who have been through this, they all say that they're not angry, which is just amazing to me. I don't understand it.
I couldn't understand that either, but I imagine that you go through various stages. Maybe
Yes.
angry initially.
Yes.
I can't imagine not being angry initially, but
yes.
I would assume a long time in prison would be very difficult. So
yes.
you'd have to come to terms with it. But, going back to Amazon for a second, has this, with Jeffrey being on Amazon, has that helped him personally as well?
Yeah, he says it has. He said, you know, of course he's so excited to have his story out there. He had told me, it's so funny. We had coffee 5 years ago, and I had asked to meet with him after my fundraiser and asked just so I could pick his brain and say, what can I do to support this cause? I didn't know what to do. I was like, should I go to law school? Should I start a podcast? I had no clue. I was just, you know, other than donating money, I didn't know what to do. And he was kind of walking me through it. He was really nice. And he was like, well, you know, law school would be the best option. A podcast, you know, is really hard to get it, you know, to really be popular and get a lot of listeners. It'd be a long road. And we had this whole long conversation. And, you know, he told me back then, like, he felt a little bit disheartened that his story isn't out there more, because he felt like people should know about it. He felt that he deserves to have his story told because of everything that he'd been through. And I was trying to talk him off that ledge. I was like, well, you can't be mad that your story's not, you know, more people don't know about it. Like, you just do what you want to do, help people, and it'll all just happen in time. You know, you just can't force those things. And it was so funny because that was before I ever thought of telling Jeff's story in any manner or even thinking about film school. And then when I did end up telling his story, and now we've had such great, you know, it's received so well. We were talking, and he said that he's overjoyed. And he also said that his like press appearances and things like that have increased by 50%. And so it's really helping him get the word out, because he has a nonprofit organization called the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation. He helps free wrongfully convicted people. And so, you know, that getting the word out more obviously helps his cause in turn. So yeah, he's very happy. And I'm happy about that, because my goal was to tell his story to help other people. So it's, you know, for both of us, it's great.
That's incredible. I mean, look at all the great work you're doing just because of that. You know, it's maybe you just wanted to tell a story, but now, you know, you're raising all this extra money, and so many different things come from it. So congratulations again. It's incredible.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been it sometimes feels weird to say, because it's such a dark topic, and, you know, it's such a
Sure. Yeah.
sad thing, but it's been such a fun project as well. And the funny thing is, Jeff will say that too. You know, we've had a lot of fun making the film, because it's the actual day-to-day filming and editing and going to film festivals. And we hadn't went to one festival because they were all during the pandemic, so everything was virtual. And then the one we got to go to in the little bit of time where the coronavirus numbers were down was the Georgia Film Festival. And that's the one where we won 2 awards, and Jeff got to come. And so for me to see Jeff, and it was very emotional, because to see, in my mind, I couldn't forget that Jeff was sitting in a prison for so many years, and to see him walk up on the stage and be so excited and, you know, get an award. It was so wonderful for me to kind of see the juxtaposition of that, thinking back to today. So it's been a really, really awesome ride. That's for sure.
That's incredible. You know, and I was looking at your website as well, Jia, and it seems like, I mean, everything that you do seems to become successful, you know. So I've also noticed that you're a contributor for Forbes Women, and you put out a lot of articles. How did you get to that as well? You know, you've kind of conquered fashion, I'll say. You know, you're doing the filmmaking, but you're also doing the writing. So how does that all fit in?
You know, the writing started way before filmmaking. Because I worked on the business operations side of the fashion industry for 20 years. And then I started my own company, which I still have today. When I was doing that, Forbes did a piece about the work we were doing with Studio 15. And that's how I ended up talking to the editors there. And then through that conversation is how they asked me to write for Forbes. And so that's how I got my column originally. And I was writing about exactly what I did, which was entrepreneurship and e-commerce growth strategies. And I've done that for a few years. And then I switched to filmmaking, but I still have the column. And now it's kind of funny because I write about my old career, but I do this now.
Yeah.
But it's such a great opportunity to write for Forbes, and I, still love it. So down the line, I'm thinking of asking them if I could, write about a mix of things, like maybe about documentaries or about wrongful convictions, as well as some business articles, so that it kind of goes more with what I do today. But for the moment, it is still a business column, but that's how that came to be.
Okay. I mean, that's really incredible that you took that opportunity as well for somebody to just interview you and, and brought it into actually writing writing a long-standing column. I mean, how do you stay on top of all the writing demands? I saw that, you know, you're putting out a handful of, looks like 4 or 5 articles a month, something along those lines.
Yeah, I try and do one a week. You know, it
Okay.
doesn't, it only takes a few hours. It's just
Okay.
for me, I was saying I'm such a type A personality. You know, I think anybody, you know, that saying, like, if you want to get something done, ask someone who's busy. Because like those are the people that are just constantly, I schedule my time like down to like
I do
20
too.
minutes, even when, right? Yeah, you'll know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, it's like I only work, funny enough, I only work like 2 days a week, you know, because I have a
Okay.
son. Normally I would work full time, but right now it's part time. And so I'm even more so forced to schedule my time down to every 20 minutes and I just stay on top of my emails and I work. I'm such a night owl. I'm more creative at night. So I usually work till 3 a.m. Like I start at
Oh my
11
goodness.
p.m. till about 3 a.m. every day. And that's my peace and quiet time when my son is asleep and I can focus more.
Oh my goodness. How do you stay
Yeah,
awake
it's
during
just,
the day?
yeah, I don't know. I do. I mean, I get up at like 10, so you know, it's still like 7 hours
Okay.
of sleep, right? And
Yeah.
then it's
No,
just I
that's
have a
true.
slightly different work day than everybody else, but I'm much more creative and productive at night. And I've noticed that about myself. In the daytime, I swear I'll stare at the computer and get nothing done for an hour. And at nighttime, I can knock off 4 hours of work in an hour. So it just works better for me.
You know, that's really interesting that you say that because you know, now that we're all on the whole work from home, um, we're we're all, you know, working from home. It seems like we're just everybody's stuck on working from that 8 to 4 or 9 to 5,
Yes.
whatever like that. A lot of people, I think, could benefit from those different hours. You know, the clock that is maybe, you know, 2 to 10 p.m. or something like that.
Yes.
You know, depending on your lifestyle and whatnot. Um, do you think that more, you know, even on the corporate side, more companies should allow those sorts of things, or how do you feel about that?
I do. And I've been a big advocate for that for years and years. I mean, my last corporate job, I left in, when was it? 2016, maybe. And I've been saying this since before I left that job, that we should have
Okay.
more flex hours. And because you get more out of people, not only because people are productive at different times of the day, but also because they appreciate you more and they'll do more work for you. Like if you say, you know, I don't care if you take 3 weeks vacation or 2 weeks, you know, just have your vacation, enjoy your time. They're
Sure.
happier to come back and work harder for you. So it works in two ways in your favor. So I've been a huge advocate for remote work and for flexible hours and things like that. I think people should be, and I've written about this before too for Forbes. I think people should be much more, their performance should be assessed on their productivity and their output. And that's it. And it doesn't matter if it takes somebody 3 hours to do 8 hours of work, or if it takes somebody 10 hours to do 8 hours of work, really, you know, it shouldn't really matter. It's a tough thing because most, especially corporations, don't think that way, but I'm a huge advocate of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, one thing that they've been saying, or I can't remember who quoted it, but reading some articles about the pandemic, especially when it first started and everybody immediately was working from home, it was all about productivity and less about the popularity game. You know,
Yes.
the people that you see or that you like based on the personality, you don't have those same types of interactions. Now it's just
Yeah.
based on that work output.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting that you place it like that.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I've had bosses, you know, at a couple of my last jobs, which is why I didn't want to be there anymore, who were like, even if you were done your work at 4, you know, you had to just sit at your desk till 5:30 and you had to walk out when they walk out. And you know, I
Mhm.
always found it to be like, what is this? It's so silly. You know, like why would you not want me to have this hour and a half to do something else and you know, I'll be more loyal to the company and to you because of it. You know, if I can go get an hour workout in or I can do whatever, but the work is top notch, then what does it matter, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even when folks do go more back to work, and as we see companies, you know, not not allow the remote work as much, because I'm sure they'll be very divided. You know, there'll be the companies that you work from home as much as you want. There'll be the other companies that want
Yes.
everybody in the office all the time. I know for me, I've saved a ton of time in driving. I mean, without commuting to and from work, there's so much time back in the day, and I find myself working more as I work remote. So the
Yeah.
miss is not being able to go out to lunch with some friends or go to a
Yes.
club.
Yeah, the human interaction part is definitely what is
Yeah.
missing. But for sure, people have less commute, so they have more time to work. And then frankly, you're home. So anytime you have downtime, you open up your computer, you're going to just answer the emails. You don't want them piling up for tomorrow. Or if there's something you can
Yeah.
get done in 3 minutes, you're like, I'll just knock it out. That's how people think nowadays, because everything's so accessible. It's on your phone, it's on your laptop, it's everywhere at all. It's on your Apple Watch.
Sure.
So people definitely work more, hands down.
Sure.
That's why I think corporations should not worry about it so much, because really majority of people aren't going to work less. They're going to work
Yeah.
more just because of accessibility.
Yeah. I love your energy, Gia. You're so just, full of passion. It's amazing to see how excited you get about these things. What are you reading, listening to? Maybe share with the audience a little bit about, those sort of things that you fill your mind up with.
Yeah, I started just yesterday listening to this podcast by Zuri Hall called Hot Happy Mess, and it's really
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. She talks to all kinds of people, but I was listening to this one with this female entrepreneur and just her journey, which has also been super interesting. What else? I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts when I can.
Okay. Yeah, that
As
makes
well.
complete sense.
Makes complete sense. I actually interviewed on a true crime podcast called Speaking of Crime. And then
Okay.
literally the night I interviewed with them, they called me, they wrote me a message and asked me to be a co-host. So I just started
Oh, wow.
co-hosting that podcast with them.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
Where can folks find that?
It's everywhere on, like, I think on, podcast app and on
Okay.
Spotify and Podbean, I think, as well. It's everywhere. If they search Speaking of Crime podcast, it'll come right up. So
Okay.
that's been really interesting because we've started to kind of research cases, and we're doing, stories on certain cases. And so that's been very, very interesting. Another thing that I did not have time to add to my schedule, but I couldn't say no. So I did it anyways.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
when something
Yeah.
falls in
And
your lap like that, it's just, you gotta just figure it out along the way, right?
yes. Yes. And as far as reading, nothing too interesting for, I guess, the average person, but I'm reading this book. I think it's called the Documentary Filmmaking Handbook, I think it's called, but it's been a great book for anyone that
Okay.
wants to dabble into documentary filmmaking. It's a really great book. I'll send you the link to it in case I'm butchering the name, but
Okay. Yeah, no, that would be great. I'm always interested in story arcs and how folks put together their stories, because it's just, I don't know. I love that stuff.
yeah, I love that stuff too. It's so funny because I had never even thought about this stuff. Like, story arc wasn't even a term in my vocabulary until I went to New
Sure.
York Film Academy. And then once they explained it all to us, it was so fascinating. I was like, I watch all these films, I never even think about this,
Yeah, now you watch them all differently, probably, right? So,
I do. I do. There's that one, Cartel Land. Have you seen Cartel Land?
no, I haven't.
Oh, you should watch that. It's a documentary, and
Okay.
it's like these journalists that went out and actually just got to ride around and travel with the cartel, and they got to film
Oh
it
my
like
goodness.
firsthand. But it's like real. I mean, people are getting killed. It's just real firsthand. It's really bizarre, and interesting and crazy. And in film school, that was one of the films they'd had us dissect for the story arc, and they went scene by scene by scene. And when you watch it that way, it was so crazy to see how much thought was put into, like, making the audience go on a ride, like an up and down emotionally. Like, okay, you're happy, you think something's going to go right, and then it goes totally wrong, and then you kind of get your hopes up again, and it goes up and down. It's very interesting to watch it through that lens.
My goodness, I can't imagine. That's incredible. Yeah, I want to go back for a second. You mentioned, taking on that podcast and just kind of fell in your lap, and you couldn't say no. And so many things we hear today is say no to more things. So it seems like a lot of folks out there giving advice, influencers, are just saying, take your time back, say no, and do these things. What? Why did you say yes to it? Let's
you
start
know
first.
For one, it really aligned with what I'm doing today. So I felt like just from a marketing perspective and from the work that I already do, I thought it would help me. I thought I could help them as well. I also am so passionate about wrongful convictions, and the co-host of that podcast is an author, and he writes books about wrongful convictions, and he's had success doing that. So I thought we could both add value, for one, and for two, I was in the process of leaving behind my old career in fashion, and now, yeah, sorry, my son has now walked in here.
Oh, no worries. No worries for that.
And so I was trying to limit those things and change my career into this direction, and so that also added value for me, of course.
That's incredible. It's just I always say that the only way to be truly successful is just to continually take on more work. And it's funny, but it's the things that other people don't want to do sometimes that is the best for you. I just go back to certain experiences where I know that I worked at a couple different agencies, and I heard people say, no, I don't want to do that. The client's crazy, or I don't have the time for that, or whatever. And I would always just say yes, no matter what I had going on. And I found that those were the best experiences, when you just say yes, figure it out along the way. And those are usually like I said, where the best stories come from. So.
For sure. Going back to what you were saying about saying yes or saying no, I say yes to most things that I think are going to be fun and beneficial. And especially if I like the other people that I'm working with, like I love talking to you, I would absolutely work with you, on anything. But I love when people have like positive energy and you jive together. The thing that I keep in mind when I want to say no to things is, if it's going to be way too time consuming, because I know how I schedule my time. But most importantly is I say no to anything and everyone that adds any negativity to my life, or anyone that seems toxic in any way, like personality traits, their motivations, or anything that seems like it's going to be toxic in any way. I just make zero time in my life for it, completely cut it out. And so that's kind of how I decide the yeses and the nos.
Yeah, and there's a big lesson there, because I'm a serial people pleaser, so I recognize that, where it's hard for me to say no to a lot of people and a lot of things. I've gotten better over the years about that, but I've started to realize that negativity, like you're saying, where what's the real reason for me feeling like I have to do this thing. So being able to just recognize that right away is incredible. And what do you do to, how do you even start on that path where you just eliminate negativity? I assume it's pretty hard at first.
It is very hard at first. And I've always been a people pleaser myself. So I would always be trying to, is everyone okay? Is everyone okay? Kind of thing, and say yes to everything. And then I realized, in my late 30s that what I needed to do is I didn't need to please everybody at all, and that I needed to put more weight in what I was feeling and what I wanted. And just the way that I was trying to please everybody else, or whoever those people were, they weren't in turn trying to please me. So I was like, why am I doing this with my time? Yeah. And when I realized that, it was very easy. You just gotta say no. And you can say no in a lot of nice ways. Like, I would love to, but I just don't have time, good luck with that. Or, if there's anything I can help you with, that's a quick, like, over email or anything, feel free to reach out. Like, there's lots of ways for people pleasers to say no in a nice way, but just set that boundary, say, I would love to do that, but I can't right now, and that's it. And they'll, people can read between the lines and stuff. I had one in my corporate job on the fashion side. I had this whole horrible situation with one employee, and an HR woman came to visit one day, and, we were talking about this employee, and she told me this, and I never forgot it. It has stuck in my head since then, and I apply it all the time. She said, you can tell anyone anything. She's like, just say it in a nice tone. She's like, you can say the exact 5 words, and you say it in a negative tone, and you're going to get a negative response and all of this stuff. You can say the exact same 5 words. She said to me, you're just going to tell him, I would love for you to work here, but this isn't working out. The work's not getting done. So it'd probably be best if you found another job, I'm going to have someone else in here tomorrow to do what we need to get done so that we're both happier. And it was like this. And I was like, what? That's the best firing I've ever heard of in my life.
Oh my
And so,
goodness.
yeah, it was just great. But that really taught me a life lesson that I've applied everywhere. And that's how I say no to people, just in a, smile in a nice way, and wish them luck with whatever they're doing. But you just say no.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna take that away from this. That's incredible.
Yeah, it helped me a ton.
I love that. Jia, what's next for you? What's next for Jia Wertz? Are you filming anything else right now? You said you're 90% on the feature length. But what's next?
So the film that's 90% done, my 2 shoots that are left, one is in Colorado, which is why I haven't been able to do it, because there's no traveling. And the other shoot is in a prison. And of course, prisons are shut down right now. So I'm really trying to get those 2 done. And I kind of have maybe found a solution, luckily, just, through connections. The Sing Sing Prison Museum is screening my film this month, and we're doing a talk there virtually, of course, Jeff and I. And as a result, the person at the Sing Sing Prison Museum who's on the board, who was connecting the screening, organizing the screening, he happens to know somebody who works at the prison who's a historian who has done tons of photography and footage. So he, I think, is willing to let me use it. So I think I'll be able to finish the film without having to actually wait for the pandemic to be over. Yeah, so that's next. And then after that, my real personal goal with my 3rd film and films going forward is to highlight the stories of people who are wrongfully incarcerated currently. Because what I hope to do, and what I've wanted to do from the beginning, is to give those people their voice, to share their side of the story, and hopefully, have investigate the history of what happened a little bit, to maybe uncover facts that they weren't aware of that could help them in their appeals or whatnot. I mean, that would be my dream scenario. Whether we can do it or not, I don't know, but that's what I hope to do.
Absolutely. You can do anything that you say yes to. So love that. Say yes to yourself, right? That's incredible. So you're talking about people that are currently incarcerated? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, people who are in jail right now wrongfully, who are stuck in the justice system and in the prison for something they didn't do. Yeah,
that would be incredible. That's a huge endeavor, but I wish you the best of luck with it, Jia.
Thank you so much. It was so awesome to talk to you.
Yeah, it was great talking to you as well. And where can people find more about you online?
Yeah, my website is just Jia Wertz. It's JIAWERTZ.com. And most of my updates go on Instagram, which is just Jia Docs, DOCS.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jia. I appreciate it. Have a great day and best of luck.
Yeah, you too.